Recorded at Get a Grip Studios in Toronto, Canada. A Get a Grip management production and in association with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Financially supported by the good folks at the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, this is Restoring Darkness podcast.
This episode of Restoring Darkness is brought to you by Evluma. If you're serious about contributing to the reduction of light pollution, go to evluma.com, hover over products, and click on Dark Sky Friendly Lighting. Both the OmniMax and AreaMax lights are International Dark Sky Association certified. The warmer color temperatures of the OmniMax reduce the more easily scattered blue wavelengths, which contribute to glare and sky glow. With AreaMax lights, you get full cutoff, which also means no uplight and a significantly reduced contribution to sky glow. And all of Evluma's outdoor lighting product lines come with dimmable drivers for even more control. If your customer is looking for dark sky-friendly fixtures with energy savings while still meeting the demands of decorative lighting, look no further than Evluma. Evluma, illuminating the pursuit of dark skies.
Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, I have Georgia MacMillan. As a mature student, Georgia completed a BA in outdoor education, which resulted in a dissertation on the subject of light pollution and fueled an interest in protecting and restoring our dark skies. This formed the basis of an application to be the International Dark Sky Association and the Gold Tier accreditation of Mayo International Dark Sky Park in Ireland. Together with local community members, she worked to raise awareness of light pollution and became a founder member of the non-governmental organization Dark Sky Ireland to facilitate engagement at all levels, from grassroots to policy. In 2021, Georgia was employed as Mayo Dark Sky Park Development Officer for the National Parks and Wildlife Service. This led to an employment-based PhD scholarship to research natural darkness as a dimension of sustainable tourism in rural communities. Her Twitter is Georgie McPorge. That's Georgie, MacPorge. There's also at Mayo Dark Skies, Dark Sky Ireland, and websites Mayo Dark Sky Park and darksky.ie. Oh, Mayo darkskypark.ie for Ireland and darksky.ie. Georgia, welcome to the Restoring Darkness podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So, I'm interested in just your profile here. I think we're moving away from the term dark skies, and I know that you said that in here, but this word restoring and this word darkness is coming into the play. How broad is the darkness restoration issue or the dark skies issue for you? What does it encompass? Is it just wildlife? Is it just stars, or is there more to it than that?
I think it's still very key to what we do, and we're still busy working away with communities here to, I suppose, engage with them on what darkness means, whilst we, at the same time, try and battle against the growth of light pollution. So even in a very rural space, which is where I'm at, in Ireland, the growth of lighting is popping up all the time. So those cultural issues, people still want to feel that, their light outside is a sign of maybe a little bit of prosperity, those kind of conversations. So the message of dark skies is really important for us to carry still.
It's interesting you talked about the cultural. There's also this idea of this conspicuous consumption nature to outdoor light at night. In where I live in a rural area in Ontario, and there seems to be more and more of people lighting up their driveways and awning lights and this kind of stuff, and on all night as well. Like not just on, from say 7 till 9 or, maybe turned off at 10 o'clock. They leave them on the entire night long. And there's a conspicuous aspect to it. It's a Gucci suit. It's a sign you've made it, that your property is lit up all night long. And I think that's the fundamental thing we need to reverse.
Yeah, and I think, it's strange in the current climate that that is still quite prominent. You'd think, we are changing attitudes towards energy here. We're in an energy crisis. Here in the west of Ireland, one of the reasons I'd attribute it to is we didn't get electrification until quite late in terms of a Western developed country.
Mm,
Mayo was one of the last places in Ireland to get streetlights. So some of the villages that I'm working with wouldn't have had lighting until the 1960s, so mid
mm,
1960s, some even later, further down the coast. So I do think that is, and we've also suffered a lot with immigration. The story with Ireland,
mm.
and the West Coast in particular has suffered. So we are a large county. We're relatively
Did you
low
mean
populate, low
immigration or emigration?
emigration
So
away.
people are
So
leaving Ireland. Yes, yes, okay.
over the years, I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
obviously the Irish emigration story is worldwide and international, and we've even made it to Canada. So,
Oh, my ancestors on
and,
my
and
dad's side of my
yeah,
family are all refugees from Ireland.
yeah. I mean, who doesn't have Irish links somewhere in the world? But
Hmm.
and that's a wonderful story. But at the same time, those that stayed here and were kind of, in the darkness, it's that negative connotation.
Mm,
And what we're trying to do is, I suppose, flip that on its head and say, hang on a second, what you actually have here in rural Ireland in the dark is something that the glitzy showies with all the fancy cars and lighting and everything will never
mm,
have.
mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to, I suppose, persuade is those that have it to love it, and those that are coming. There's a lot of people starting to come to the country because it's beautiful, and by the country I mean the rural part of Ireland, leaving
Mm-hmm.
the city, especially in post COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We've got something more to offer, I think. But with that, we're trying to persuade, maybe don't bring urban into rural. Try and, live with, the natural light and natural darkness along with that. Find that balance rather than bringing, the driveway lights along with it, and
Yeah.
every corner of the light is lit because that's the way it is in an urban environment, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually I'm Canadian, and when I know from my Irish ancestors is that their story is not wonderful.
Mm,
It's ridiculously tragic and awful how
mm,
they got to Quebec and into Canada. They're refugees, not immigrants, and I think a lot of people don't really understand that so much. But I mean, there's 85 million of us around the world, so there's a lot of us out there. And what is there 5
yeah,
million people in Ireland or something like that?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But one of the
yeah.
things about these flows and with respect to the darkness preservation piece of it, but really with anything, I remember when Donald Trump got elected, and I'm not going to get into the politics of whether good or bad or anything like that, but I have a lot of friends in the U.S. and they would say to me things like, if Trump gets elected, I'm moving to Canada, or if Biden gets elected, I'm moving to Canada. It's
Mhm.
like, who said we wanted you actually? First of all, like, first of all,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
who's stating that you're
yeah,
welcome? But there's this assumption that when people move, they're allowed to take everything and all of their attitudes and all of their presuppositions and their ostentatiousness and their wealth with them. And in some ways, it imposes. And in this dark sky piece, people that want to bring their ostentatious outdoor light with them, just because they have enough money, regardless as to
yeah,
the energy cost, it doesn't matter to them.
yeah,
They're just so wealthy. We need, like, this is an area where we could say no to that. You could say no. You know what? We don't want that ostentatious. It's okay to have an outdoor light on while you have guests over for dinner, but we need to turn it off at
yeah,
nine
of
o'clock.
course.
How do we get that? It's almost like, there's this element of it where there's this rights trespass piece that I'm allowed to light my property up as much as I want, and I think we need to focus on the light trespass piece, that your light is actually affecting my rights. Does that make sense,
Yeah, it's
Georgia?
it does, and it's that thing. It's, do we have a right to darkness? People often talk about, that, that sidewalk maybe isn't lit. We have a right to it. It's like we lose our civil responsibilities when we go out at night because somebody else should be providing the light for us. But we also have a right to darkness, and we have a right to enjoy that space and get that. Well, what I like walk at night quite a lot, and I like to just get that peace and tranquility and reset that we all talk about with our biological clocks, yada yada. But it's true. We do need that. So I think it's partly persuasion, but it's also educate. It's a number of things. I mean, education is big in it, but it's I think changing attitudes. You need to, it's like with the water crisis. If somebody leaves a leaking tap on now, it's frowned on, and we've kind of
But we
come
have
around
to
for.
do better than shame and humiliation. Like I don't like
Yeah,
that. It's like we
yeah.
have to be, because you always inadvertently you always end up with people that are very nasty taking the lead on that and going too far.
Oh
Especially with
no,
Twitter and social media.
yeah, no, I'd agree with you not to do it that way, but I think, people are self-regulating in terms of, people
Mm,
don't leave plastics,
sure.
and it's become a full circle that people are educating themselves and not doing it. So if we
Mm,
could do something that just triggers that thought process, nobody leaves a tap on anymore, or nobody,
mm-hmm.
not nobody, but, generally people
Sure.
clean up after themselves and are getting that message. So why not the same with lighting, that, when we look in the sky and we see sky glow, we should be thinking, well, that's not right. We shouldn't see that. We should see, even if it's cloudy, which we admittedly get a lot of here,
Mm.
we just want to see clouds. So we want to see something natural, not something artificial in our skies. It's not healthy.
The Do you think the problem is that light pollution is largely seen as a metaphor to most people and not an actual type of pollution?
Yeah, I mean, it's partly because, like, we don't have regulation, we don't have policy. There's no legislation here on it, so it's not really considered a main pollutant. It's more of even in
It's not considered a
academic
pollutant for
literature, it's
sure by
no.
Environment Canada, by the environmental protection agencies in the United States. It's not considered a pollutant
No.
by the Ministry of the Environment of the province I live in. But we do have various local ordinances and such which are meant to reduce light trespass, but not light pollution as such. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that we as a community we need to work towards the general population seeing light pollution as pollution. In fact, if
Mm.
you go to the restoringdarkness.com website, folks listening, you can buy a sweater, a hoodie, a t-shirt that says on the back of it, light pollution is pollution. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because it is, and it's the most easily remedied pollution of all, Georgia.
The flick of a switch.
Flick of a
Yeah.
switch.
Um,
So
no, that's a really important thing to get across to people, that it is a pollutant. But who's the most important person that needs to know that, and to affect change as a result of that. It's not just, it is our grassroots, but it's also multi-layered at government level.
it's a
Um,
complicated problem because um, the presupposition that light is safety, or artificial or electric light at night is correlated to safety even within the courts. When you
mm-hmm.
when you have someone get injured, that you could be your lawsuit or your damages could go up if there wasn't adequate. I'm putting quotations for the listeners in the air. If there wasn't adequate or massively light polluting outdoor lights in the space,
Mm-hmm.
people would use various regulations and codes, and they'd pull out the books and say you didn't meet the standard, and people can be sued. So, is it, what's the first step towards this? Is it public awareness, or is it regulation? Is it industry alignment? What do you think or is it all of it?
I think it's all of it. I think, people need to take responsibility. That's another thing. You get into a sue culture because, we start thinking, oh, that's somebody else's fault. I tripped. I went up a mountain and I got my leg caught on a fence. Well, there's personal responsibility and risk that we have to take account of. And I think with the darkness, that's an environmental issue. It's not like somebody's created a dark space for you. That's nature. Many times by adding artificial light, as we're creating ultra dark areas that are now, I think more threatening than if we left it alone. Um,
Mm.
one thing
Explain that to
my
me more. Ultra dark
yeah,
areas that are
well,
more threatening. What do you mean by that?
yeah, well, when you overlight
Mm.
an area, you create, like, I find, a lot of the new LEDs that
Mm-hmm.
it's very bright in one area,
Oh, you're
and
talking
it's
about by
extra dark.
contrast.
The
By
contrast is
contrast. By
mm,
contrast, yeah, for sure. Well,
exactly, yeah.
I think we're failing to understand, like, fundamentally the lighting industry needs to understand how the eye works. And
Yeah.
the perception. So one of the things that I've talked about in the show, and Scott's gonna start pushing a buzzer on me here or something, because I've told this story a lot of times. But when you're pulled over by a police officer in a car at night, okay, and they come up to your car and shine a flashlight in your window, that is an act of aggression that prevents you from seeing who they are and whether or not they're armed or holding a gun, and them being able to see everything that you're doing and what you have in your car. And so
Hmm.
that's the contrast we're talking about. And so
Hmm.
if we create these contrasts on our street, and the higher the light is, the more intense the light is, the more the glare is, the
Hmm.
greater the contrasts will be. And so you can't see through that body of light into the darkness. It's even worse after. And
Exactly,
so if you're
exactly.
traveling through it in a vehicle very quickly, it's even exacerbated further. And if you're traveling through it in a vehicle quickly and you're elderly and your eyesight doesn't adjust as quickly as possible, it's even more dangerous. You're even more likely to get into an accident as you travel through that 500 lux of LED light into the darkness. Your eyes have, maybe you're traveling 70 kilometers an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, and you can't see the road in front of you anymore. This is a very serious problem, actually, you've pointed out, Georgia. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing that we don't recognize. Let's say, for instance, one of the arguments you mentioned, safety there. One of the arguments for women at night is, let's put lots of light up.
Hmm.
And I again, I walk at night. I walk on
Hmm.
my own as a female at night. I'm very exposed when I'm in an area that's overlit, and I can't see the corridors on either side of the roadway I'm walking. I can see what's straight ahead of me, but I also know that I am very much on show, if you want, from
Hmm.
whatever is in the black on either side. So to me, that you said it right there. The lighting industry needs to rethink as well, and we need to know how to use light. And quite often, what I find here is we don't have very much in the way of lighting design. We have lighting contractors who will install lights per the box or per the specification or per a computer layout, but they won't really design and go and look at that environment and really see it or test it and see what it looks like after dark for the users. It's all about specification and, does that match what it says on the computer? Well, in reality, no.
We have to get away from computer models. I think computer models cause us a lot of problems. I know that in the light, I'm a lighting distributor. I sell lighting to factories all the
Mm-hmm.
time. The computer models are always way off. There's
Mm-hmm.
no actual resemblance to reality
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. Like it's almost it's only for amateurs. And people are gonna Colligan doesn't know what he's doing. I do light renderings all the time, and da da da. You can't do light renderings for a factory that's filled with machines and racks and people. You can do a light rendering for a big open space, maybe on an inside that has
Yeah.
nothing in it. Sure, maybe you'll be within 10%. But you start putting three-dimensional machines in there, and people and everything else, and forklifts and
It
racks, and
changes.
you don't know what the heck. Those renderings are completely worthless. So, yeah, I think we have to get away from this. Because what was hilarious during the pandemic, and I hate to go to the pandemic, but it's just like, I have this fear in my head. It's like the doctor told me to do this. The chief medical officer told. The next one's going to be the AI told me to do this. You know what I mean? The computer,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
computer
Yeah.
told us to do this, and the computer knows everything. You know what I mean? I just feel like that's a
Yeah.
very difficult. I don't want to go
It's
there, but so you talked about the safety, and you're as a woman, and that's oftentimes what we're talking about is this male aggression on female that we're trying to prevent, because you don't often hear men say things like, I want street lighting because I'm scared of other men. I don't, like, you never hear that
mm,
really.
mm,
It doesn't really
mm.
happen. It's this male and female dynamic. And the argument is that if we shine artificial light or electric light on all the streets so that the women can walk through these streets, the men will think that they're protected by the light or something. And I think that's a completely false presupposition. I think they get to see how old the woman is. They get to see how vulnerable the woman is. They get to see
Yeah,
if she's
exactly.
walking with another man or if she's walking
Yeah.
with another woman. They get to see whether they're attracted to them, especially if they're drunk. They've been drinking
Hmm.
alcohol. They can shout
Hmm.
across the street at them. They can run after them and follow them. I'm not so sure that idea that electric light is an extension of male protection of women I'm 100% sure it's not true, actually. And I think we need to really convince our city planners and other people that this idea that women and children are safe because electric light is shined on the paths that we walk down, I don't think that's correct. I think there needs to be a certain amount of electric light, but I don't believe this keyhole to keyhole total uniformity is the answer.
Yeah, I think we probably need more research to support it because, a lot of the time we find, there's just not enough to support. And it's a little bit like the car, you mentioned the cars and traveling on the roads and that,
Mm.
are we seeing accidents that are not attributed to the lighting yet? I've not really read or found much in terms of, supporting what I think may cause accidents. If you're blinded, and they
Mm-hmm.
say the road the RAC in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
they had a statistic saying that the human eye takes 5 seconds to recover from being blinded by glare.
Well,
Well, if you're driving,
that would be an average, probably.
yeah.
That
So
would
if you're
be like older
driving,
people might even be longer.
longer than that, yeah. So, I mean, there must be accidents that happen in those 5 seconds. A lot can happen. We're told about our mobile phones. We're all very aware of that, not to be
Mm.
glancing at your mobile phone. Well, if you're
Mm-hmm.
blinded, but we just don't. Maybe it's too soon. We haven't seen the statistics, or it's not reported yet because
Well,
it's
no,
taking a while to get
I would
into.
say that it's even worse than that. I would say
Yeah.
that after the accident happens, the head-on collision or the driving off the road or whatever happens, the idea is that we need more light. We didn't have enough
Yeah.
light,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's what the conclusion becomes. And so we're battling this straw man who instead of stepping back and saying I have to prove that my more light is is good, they say, "What are you talking about? You have to prove that more light isn't good."
Mm.
And what do you like? How dare you? The more the light, the better. It's a complete straw man argument. People that there's nobody that will come on this show and argue that with me because they're just going to deliver straw man art. They're going to say, "Prove to me that darkness is safer than more light." And I'm going to say to them, "There's no studies," but I'm going to say we're both in the same position. You
Mm.
have no
Yeah.
proof, and I have no proof.
No, it's just such an easy argument for somebody to make to convince somebody who's not aware of the issues with excess light.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
They're always going to win amongst it's an intervention that seems like it's always better to most human beings. Of
Mm.
course more
Hmm.
light is equals more safety because you can see better,
Hmm.
but that's
Yeah.
not necessarily, we know that's not true. um, Tell me, it's interesting. I've been thinking about eyesight therapy a lot. Okay, my daughter has an issue with her eyes, and I'm watching the kind of exercises they're getting her to do. And I've interviewed a lot of people in Lighting, and they talk about how the eye works during the day and how you're kind of extending and closing these rods and all this kind of stuff that happens. I bet you there's a type of darkness eyesight therapy that would be helpful for people too. Take off the sunglasses, go for a walk during the day. But as you said, Georgia, maybe your eyesight would be improved if you went for a walk at night
Mm.
without light.
If you
You
experience
understand what I
that
mean? Yes, yes.
peripheral vision a little bit more and allow, I mean, it's in our human evolution that we have to, not full night vision, but certainly have reasonable night vision for contrast and for shadows and constructs. So, um, yeah, I think just more. One of the things I do at the moment on a weekly basis is dark sky walks. And I'm only just after Christmas now, I'm only just getting back to it tomorrow. But we do weekly walks in the dark sky park, and that's something we talk about. Is how long it takes for the eyesight to adjust, and with some people it's quicker than others, and how people are feeling as they walk along in the dark, and you know what can they see? And quite often they can see more, not immediately, but they can see more than they expected to because, the contrast, we might have a little bit of moonlight and people forget how bright moonlight is because they
It's
never
very
encounter
bright,
it. The
actually.
sky is so bright. Yeah,
It's very
yeah.
bright.
So,
Well,
yeah.
this is why I don't like the term dark skies. I think
Hmm.
it's a
See,
misnomer.
yeah, yeah. I suppose natural. I mean, when I do quite a few community talks, and in that context, I would use natural skies, but I
Yeah.
would still bring it in. So dark skies or natural skies.
I like the term
Um,
night preservation, darkness restoration. The dark
yeah,
sky, it's like, first of all, it's like, who wants to go out into a dark sky? It's like, oh, it's dark sky. It must be evil that night. Whereas
yeah, yeah.
I think that's a misnomer and causes problems in the movement. But, the next question for you. Who is the leader of this movement? It seems very distributed. I've talked to so many people from around the world, and there's people coming at it from different angles. Who is the leader worldwide? Who is the leader of this in Ireland, and what can they do better?
In Ireland, well, do you mean individuals or groups or?
I mean, like right now, to me, this movement lacks leadership. The
Yeah.
lighting industry is reticent to get involved here in North America, and I mean, there's a kicking and screaming aspect to all
Mm,
of this. I
mm,
find, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and they will. I'm That's how I'm putting it.
yeah.
Um, like the International Dark Sky Association. I love the work they're doing. I think the mandate is beyond the scope of what they're able to do as an
Mm,
association. I don't think they have the resources. I don't think they have the enough people. I don't think that I think that the issue is so distributed in different areas, and they're largely an astronomy society that wants to look at the stars through telescopes, and that's their foundation, which is why they want darkness so they can see bright skies. Really, is what they want
mm.
or what their mandate started as. And so I'm wondering who the leaders are, and if they're not there, who they should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's probably, to that extent, it probably does lack leadership, worldwide. I mean, Ireland doesn't have. We did here in Mayo. We came to, I suppose, the dark sky movement not through astronomy. We didn't have anyone who was an astronomer in our group, so it was more along the lines of, we wanted to keep what we had as
Mm,
naturally dark. That's only on a small scale, though. Um, Ireland now we're forming Dark Sky Ireland. We've registered our NGO. Effectively it's been a network group for quite a while, as in interested parties, mostly
sure.
astronomers
So
historically
you're
around the country.
formalizing that into a legal entity now.
Yeah, yeah. So we've
What's the
just
mandate?
we're just working on our strategic plan at the moment.
Mm,
So we are trying to raise awareness through policy and engagement at national level. So we have different departments here. So from the environment, our rural and community development departments, our heritage agencies. So as many different agencies as we can engage with. And to be fair, they are at least listening to us and giving us table space. And education wise, to get in with other environmental groups who have comparable objectives. So, they might be restoring, for instance, the bogs here, the
mm.
blanket bogs that we have that need to be restored. So, where we can, I suppose, work with another group with similar interests, then that works well. You've heard the phrase "half the park is after dark." That's really important to us to keep conservation going around the clock. So,
You know how I see this, and this is going to be more of the entrepreneur side. So there's different kinds of people in this space. Okay, so there's spiritual people. There's sort of nature biologists, people concerned with bats and bees and fireflies, and then there's astronomers. There's just general environmentalists that have come across this issue, and there's a host of different people. But I think that the number one um, thing that would really start this thing on fire is for the lighting industry to realize that this is the biggest single opportunity to sell a ton of light fixtures.
But yeah, but I agree with you there. I mean, we can't get. I can do as many talks as I want
Yep.
on how to light. Don't use this light. Go warm Kelvin. Use shielded lights.
Sure.
And if my next door neighbor wants to buy a dark sky friendly light
You can't find it
locally, they
anywhere.
cannot
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. It's
They
a
can look at
tragedy.
the IDA's. Yeah, the IDA's website.
You go to a
and
major
go,
manufacturer in the United States,
you
they don't have a dark sky section on their outdoor lighting website even.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
tragedy. But you know what it is?
Okay.
It's the single biggest opportunity in front of the lighting industry.
Yeah, it is.
Bar
It's
none.
massive. Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah.
Every light fixture outside's in play. But you know what we have to do? Like you said, it's this idea, and it goes back to your original point that you made, that there's this idea that electric light at night is like a Gucci suit. That it's like the type of conspicuous consumption a successful person engages in. Like that idea. It's like, I light up my long driveway as my driver drives me up the road. My lights are all on, and this kind of thing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I saw a tweet on Twitter, or I guess a tweet would be on Twitter. I saw something on Twitter that was like, capitalism is better than communism. And it was like a satellite image of North and South Korea, and light pollution was crazy in South Korea, and there was no
you see
light
that
pollution
black
in
line.
there. Yeah. And it's like, I would like to invert that, or like I would just like to be black everywhere, and that to be the sign of success. The new sign of success is darkness at night.
No, you're so right. I mean, that the adverts here, our electricity board used an advert with Chris Haddington up in the space station looking down, and oh, isn't it beautiful to see, every light there is a person. I'm just thinking, you're just giving the wrong message here. We shouldn't see that light from space. Okay, it looks pretty if you want to call it that, but we should see. One of the things I think is a nice way of getting the point across is we should see the effect and not the source of light.
Or no, we need people's disgust mechanism to start to kick in with this. You understand what I mean? It's like with smoking. People go outside, they smoke, they throw their cigarette on the ground. It's like, what are you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
25
That's
years
what I was
ago,
trying to get at with
throwing a cigarette on the ground, everyone did it.
It's
right?
not acceptable anymore. Yeah.
Not acceptable.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of thing I was trying to get at with I suppose, leaving the tap on. We don't do it anymore. We've come over that cultural shift, if you like.
I wanted to before we get into a little bit of your work, which I do want to get into, I want to throw an idea at you, and it comes from, I think I'm a new type of person in this space. Okay, the dark sky space, or the darkness restoration space. Okay, and I'm hyper competitive, and I have like a fighting instinct in me, and I like to win. Okay, I enjoy that. Like if I win in a game, I like it, right? And I think that this movement needs to start competing with climate change. It needs to look at climate change and plastics in the ocean and all these other environmental problems as competitors to us. And it's like, people, what are you talking about? How dare you look at it like that? But that's actually what it is. There's a limited amount of funds. Okay, and we should be able to go and say to government agencies and say to the lighting industry and say to these industry bodies that, ivory tower folks that like to cloak themselves in all the accolades of environmentalism and speak down to the people, the kinds of people I'm talking about, right? We're going to change, all the people out there, we're going to change them over to environmental friendliness, and we're going to help the little people. Listen, if we take the lighting industry, Georgia, and we say, listen, lighting industry, your only goal is to restore darkness. That's it. So, what do you mean? That's all we want you to do as a society and as Western countries or as the world or whatever it is. Restore our darkness for us. You'll get the energy savings. You'll get the lighting controls piece. You'll get the circadian, all the other things that the lighting industry talks about. And I think our issue is the most visible, easily solvable environmental problem humans can address right now, today. And the fact that we're ignoring it and focusing on problems that are largely not solvable today is a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
I agree. You're right. I think rather than I wouldn't necessarily say it's one is more. I'm not competitive, so I wouldn't necessarily say one is more important than the other. But I think where you're so right is it's the holistic message that we have that can solve a number of things. So, when people go and talk about climate action and energy saving, and they think, oh yeah, let's use lights that are more energy efficient, and of course, they end up using twice the number of them and not saving energy. But at the same time, they're damaging the ecosystems and or the habitat and invertebrates there. So what we have is a message that covers a bit of energy, a bit of biodiversity, culture, and so on. It's the holistic picture that we have the solution for, not just one element of some of the sustainable issues that are going on in today's world.
But
We have a mechanism that covers all.
here's why I like the competitive piece. This is why I think there's roles for each person in it, right? You understand what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And my competitive side is like there's a limited amount of funds available for environmental projects. Okay? And your project is saying that you're going to save a whole bunch of energy. Now, we tried that in the lighting industry, and you know what happened? We saved a whole bunch of energy, but we created a ton of light pollution.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah,
Because we had the
yeah,
wrong goal. And we
yeah.
landed squarely in Jevon's paradox, which is that the cheaper something becomes, the more of it we
Mm-hmm.
use. And so we had the wrong goal. And what I'm saying is that you climate change people, what's your goal? Like, I mean, people are like, well, aren't we all climate change people? Well, hang on a second here. Let's look at the issue. If you give us 1/10 or 20% of all the money that you're about to blow on things that you're not sure are going to work, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's research and development, and we're going to try to make fission happen, and then we're putting the windmills all over Ireland, and also just give us 20% of it, and we'll return to you a ton of energy savings, and we'll return to you a ton of biodiversity, and we know this will work for sure. So let's
Yeah,
do the darkness restoration is the low hanging fruit of climate
it is. Yeah,
change.
yeah.
Everything else is way more complicated than us. But the wind energy guys, the nuclear fission guys, the electric vehicle guys, they're crowding out us when our proposition is far more valuable to Ireland, Canada, and the world, and sublime and spirituality and everything else. And I think we need to fight for that. And there's not enough
Yeah,
fighters in this movement.
yeah. What are
That's what
we
I'm
doing
saying.
wrong though? Is that what it is? You think there's not, yeah, there's not
Well,
enough
no,
fighters?
we're playing
Uh,
second fiddle to people that
yeah,
have no idea what they're doing. Like, I'm being honest with you here.
yeah,
Like, we need to reduce our energy consumption by 50%. Okay, well, make a mandate and see what happens. And it's like, well, hang on a second here. Instead of making that mandate and building wind turbines everywhere and putting solar panels on everybody's roof and hoping for the best, why don't
yeah,
we do this beautiful, wonderful gift that is returns on so many different levels for human beings and for biodiversity and for the earth and for energy savings and for beauty and for sanctity, and like there's just it operates on so
yeah,
many
yeah,
different
yeah.
levels. Like, nothing's
You're right.
uglier than a big windmill in Mayo County, Ireland, no?
We have enough of them. Yeah, I know.
So I went
I
on a
hear
little
you.
rant
I
there.
hear you.
So, tell me a little bit about the application that you made for the Dark Sky Park, and how that went and how long it took. Yeah.
Yep, that was I have to think back now. That was when we were 2014. I was studying and I came across Galloway Forest Park in Scotland.
Hmm.
And so we started to talk to other groups here. My mother's, you might have picked up on my accent. I'm a Londoner originally.
Hmm.
Um, and I have been living here for, well, I don't know, quite a while anyway. In Ireland, 30 odd years, but in Mayo, about half that. My mother, however, is from the west of Ireland and moved to London. So she had a very different experience from me, going from darkness to the light in London, and I had the reverse. So what I was aware of when I started talking to people here is that, that thing I mentioned earlier, that, there's think social changes have happened here, and people value the representative light that they had when we got electric light in this area. So talking to them about turning the lights off was a bit of a struggle initially, but we had some very good local community people here from different communities, not just one, and a very good national parks team to work with. So we formed a group, Friends of Mayo Dark Skies, started taking measurements and putting in the application. So that, I mean, you probably had this conversation numerous times, but it takes about 2 years to get a dark sky application together, off to the Dark Sky Association, and they were great, supported us, and we got a gold tier in 2016. And since then we have been, I suppose, I have to stress with those applications, that's really the beginning of the story. You must never work towards dark sky accreditation as the end goal, because that's only the start of it, and that's really important. That's the first thing I'd say to any group. Forget the accreditation. The most important thing is, what are you going to do with it after you have it, and how are you going to work with it, and what are you going to make? You have to keep working on getting dark skies and expanding dark skies and keeping them dark and educating people in urban areas about dark skies. It's not just where we are.
Yeah, listen, we haven't even stopped the increase of light pollution. I mean,
no.
This is where, the entire environmental movement, like when I look at it, and again, like I'm not a I don't know, like a go along to get along guy. I do podcasts. A lot of people listen to them because I point these kinds of things out, and they may not like it, but they know, perhaps, I wouldn't say it's right, but they know it's an interesting point often. Like, let's think about what he said. Like, the carbon emission people, like, okay, before you start saying we're going to reduce by 2050, why don't you show me you can stop increasing?
Yeah.
Like, you understand what I mean? Like in Canada, it just keeps going like this, right? And so you have the government coming, we have this climate change goal by 2030, we're going to do this. And then next portfolio comes along, and we're building 550,000 new homes in Ontario in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And what are you talking about? Like, are you crazy? You can't put enough LEDs in those homes fast enough. Like, we have changed every single light in Ontario to LED, it made no blip on the increase in carbon emissions in the province. Nothing. It just kept going, right? And you know what? Ontario is all nuclear and hydroelectricity, basically 85%. And so we're not burning very much coal or natural gas.
Fuel, yeah.
No, I mean, but we still keep it. We already have the nuclear power plants in the dams. And we can't stop going up. Like, what, by your own measurements?
Thought.
It is a sobering thought. Like, you're going to tell me you're going to jam all these windmills, and we have thousands of windmills in Ontario. We got solar panels everywhere. We got some of the best nuclear power plants in the world. We got Niagara Falls to produce electricity for us. There's not a lot of Niagara Falls in the world. It might be the only one, actually. There's another one in Africa, I think, in the Congo or something like that, right? And we can't stop. And then they want to, we're going to build 500,000 new homes, and Canada is accepting 500,000 immigrants in the next year. Oh, and you're going to reduce your carbon emissions, are you? That seems pretty impossible to me, actually. What you're talking about. It seems completely unachievable and unrealistic, which is why your goal is 50 years from now or 20 years from now. So you'll be long gone and out of power, and it'll be someone else's problem. Whereas right now, we can solve the darkness issue, and it will contribute to your climate change goals. It's, like I said, it will operate on so many different levels. Can you believe we've talked for almost 45 minutes? I can't believe that.
Wow. No, I can't.
The time went by like that. Tell me a little bit about the Wildlife Service. So you have the parks and the Wildlife Service and that, and it's Ireland, so it's not like Canada where you have these vast uninhabited regions. So there's people living there. Are the people living in the area, have you got them on board, or do they still need to be convinced?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the UK national parks, where people are not living in the national park. It's state owned, but by size wise, it's small. So our national park here is 15,000 hectares. So it's like I don't know what that is, 150 square kilometers if you go do a loop around it. So it's from Irish point of view, we have it's mountainous, but again by our standards, they're not that high, but it's mountainous, and it's covered in Atlantic blanket bog, which is one of our carbon sink. Effectively, it's our rainforest, so we need to preserve that. People live around the outside in either towns or villages. So I live in one of them nearby, which is Newport. And as an example, Newport is very much on board with the dark sky and the national park movement, because we like to think of ourselves as a gateway to the dark sky park. The community started up a festival, 2016, a dark sky festival, and that has been one of the key calendar events of the year. It happens in November, and if you think about our weather conditions, it's cold, it's windy. When we do have, it can be cloudy, but when we do have dark skies, it's absolutely beautiful. But even if we don't, we have multifaceted themes. It's not all about astronomy. We have last year we had a woman who spoke about rowing the Atlantic single-handedly. She was Ireland's first solo rower. So she spoke about her journey and what she saw in midway through the Atlantic in the night sky. Other people talk about light pollution. We've had Kevin Gaston. We've Kerem Asfaroğlu, who I know you've had not that long ago, talking about lighting design, and he's done some amazing projects with us. So we're getting the community to work with lighting design and with the national park goals and objectives.
How many hectares did you say the park is?
15,000.
Okay. So, yeah, that's interesting. I just was doing some research. So Ireland is 6.9 million hectares. I was just looking at it on the
right. Okay.
There you go. So 15,000, you said? Yeah, so a medium-sized park in Ontario is 37,000 hectares. And I don't know if it's a dark sky park or not. And then the big one, Algonquin Park, is 765,000 hectares. So
yeah,
that's
you see,
like
we don't have
1/10 the size of Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I always say this, like, Europeans don't have geography. Canada does. Canada doesn't have history. Europeans do. It's kind of, First Nations people aside, love my brothers and sisters that are First Nations, yes. But it's very short time frames. But Canada's got a lot of geography and wilderness, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final thoughts, George? It's been such a wonderful pleasure to chat with you. And
Yeah,
I feel like I talked a little
likewise.
bit too much, but you flicked some switches on my back that kind of got me passionate. Any final
it's
thoughts for the
great.
listeners? Yeah.
Can you come visit to, to explain a few of these concepts? So I think
You know what?
it's always great to have different voices.
I've been to Ireland 3 times, and I studied at Queen's Belfast in Belfast for a year.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so I'm quite familiar. And I hitchhiked all over the island, and I love the west coast of Ireland from is it Cork in the south to Donegal in the north? Yeah, and then in the middle there is Limerick is kind of halfway between the two.
Galway, yeah. So you did
Galway,
what's known the Wild Atlantic Way. When did you hike? Was that a while ago or?
Oh, now we're showing I'm pretty old. So you're going back, that would have been 1999.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, in the last 10 years, we've had what's known as the Wild Atlantic Way, it's a route that's always been there, but it connects Donegal with Cork, and it's a route that people either drive, cycle, they don't walk it, but it's the coastal route, and it's absolutely beautiful. And we are on the Wild Atlantic Way in County Mayo, so north of Galway. Come and visit us, I would say, we can show you our very minor-sized, but very beautiful and enjoyable and hospitable dark sky park.
Yes, I would love to come, and I'm taking that seriously, by the way. So I might actually come. That's not out of the question. I'd love to.
Well, we
I'd love
wouldn't
to go
say,
back.
Ireland. We don't say it unless we mean it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I've been to the Giant's Causeway 3 times. Okay. Because I
Okay.
went on a rugby tour of Ireland in 1995, and we went to the Giant's Causeway. Then my sister came to Ireland when I was in school there, and I went to the Giant's Causeway. And then my school took me to the Giant's Causeway. And every time I went to the Giant's Causeway, I said, I'm never coming here again. Why would I ever come back here? I saw it once, but I keep ending up coming back to Ireland for some reason. So it looks like I have another reason to go to County Mayo and meet the
Brilliant.
wonderful folks that are managing the Mayo Dark Sky Park. And you can check that out, folks, online. You can go to mayodarkskypark.ie, and for you, it's Mayo, like mayonnaise, Mayo darkskypark.ie for Ireland. You can go to darksky.ie to learn more about Georgia and her colleagues and her work. And then, of course, on Twitter, she's Georgie McPorge. That's Georgie, MacPorge. And then that's on Instagram as well. And there's another handle on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and that is Mayo Dark Skies. And then, of course, there's Dark Sky Ireland. And if you made it to the end, I love all you people out there. Let's move this issue forward. And you know what? We need fighters, but we also need people that are like Georgia, like they're much nicer than me. But we need everybody to be part of this movement, the entire human race. And this is the issue of the 21st century. So let's do it. Or this is the 22nd. Anyway, we got 100 years to get this done, folks. And hopefully I'm not dead before we see serious progress. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Look no further for dark sky-friendly products than Evluma. Since its first product launch, Evluma has carried one or more International Dark Sky Association certified models. If your customer cares about light pollution, suggest the OmniMax with shielding or the AreaMax with full cutoff to reduce uplight and glare. Evluma, illuminating the pursuit of darkness.